broadcast. And we're going every other week, and I intend to continue going every other week. If the tides shift, could go more often, less often. I don't think it's going to be less often. So much going on in our world, so much to come that's going on in our world. Now, today Mercury goes from retrograde to direct. And I remember in the past, I've told everyone about what that can be like on the day that it's changing directions from retrograde to direct. In 2000, it did that on election night. Election night was chaotic. First, they'd pick one person they said was president, then the next person won, back to Gore, back to Bush. I kept going actually for a couple of weeks after. And then this latest time, the next time that Mercury changed directions was on the election night that we just had in 2020, November 3rd, I believe. And of course, that was kind of like what's going on for a while with that too. In fact, afterwards, steal the vote or whatever he was saying was being done. That added some confusion. Because there's a lot of difficulty nowadays to know what the truth is. Maybe in a way, there's some things that are better about the way it is now and some things that are worse. The part that's worse in my estimation is because you don't know what's true and what's not. And the part that's good is it's not like a set anything. You have a mind that can say, well, maybe that makes sense, or maybe that makes sense, or maybe this one makes sense. So in some ways it can be a positive, as long as you can sort through the truth and non-truth of things. So as Mercury changes directions tonight at 7:52 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I believe. So today and maybe even tomorrow, there might still be a little confusion about things or difficulty communicating with one another. So be patient with yourself and be patient with people that you're communicating with. And be patient with me if I make some crazy statements or something that I mix up the dates or whatever. I do not intend to, and I don't think I will very much, but that's something that I need to be on the watch for. So, Mercury going direct. It's a wonderful, wonderful situation. We have a couple of guests today. We have my lovely wife, Deborah. She'll be coming on later to let you know about any passages or sacred movements there are on our planet. And we have David Mahaney. He has been our resident expert on UFO, extraterrestrial events and situations, which is going to continue to be an important part of this show. I've just been feeling so called to talk more about this. And even when you look at different places in the government, Pentagon, things like that, they are starting to loosen up and say, we're going to make full disclosure, or we're going to put more out there for people to see for themselves what's been going on with the metaphysical, not metaphysical necessarily, but with the extraterrestrial world. Whether people have actually come to this planet from somewhere else, whether they're still here on our planet from somewhere else. We've talked before, many people recognize that 1947, in the summer of 1947, was something that kind of got the whole idea of UFOs and extraterrestrials, that whole idea started to really become something that people were paying attention to because of Roswell, New Mexico. July 8th, 1947, a plane was said to have crashed outside of Roswell. And at first, the government person told everybody that it was an unidentified flying object and it crashed, and really put across the notion that we were being visited by people or entities from somewhere else. Didn't take long for the military to jump back in, again, the authorities there, and to tell us it was a weather balloon. No, 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 it was not any extraterrestrials. It was a weather balloon. So that meant that the military of the USA was going to put a kibosh on any potential for seeing the truth of us being visited by others. Again, David's going to talk some more today about um, going back in history um, and letting us know about different events that happened around UFOs and extraterrestrials. We're also going to have, I'm in the process of getting on the air some people that also have strong experience with this subject. A couple of Native American people are on the docket to come in. You know, in their version of things, most tribes talk about the star people. So we'll talk with them. There's another lady that I was told by David, actually, is in Prescott, Arizona, and she's got a lot of experience with events that have happened. In fact, David later today, I think, is going to talk about Phoenix and the event that happened there. I think 1997, because that was a pretty powerful event. We'll get to that too. But point is, again, I'm going to bring in more and more people because I really feel this is important for us to get out there. Do I feel that it's going to happen, that we're going to get like a more mass consciousness awareness of people from somewhere else, whether that's another planet or another dimension, whether it's internal or external? I know when I interviewed John Mack, Dr. John Mack, back in late 90s on my radio show on public television in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He's a psychiatrist that wanted to investigate abductions, if they really happened. Lots of people were saying they were abducted by aliens. So he went out there figuring, he's a psychiatrist too, this Dr. Mack, and he figured he's going to get a lot of information that's going to lead him to believe that there's a lot of crazy people out there that think they've been abducted, but they haven't, just paranoid schizophrenics or something else. But he went out to interview people all over the world, and he did not come back with a feeling of this is all a hoax. This is all crazy people. He actually believed them. He said most of them had very similar stories as to what happened to them, and that they checked off with one another. Not they didn't know one another, but what one person said and another person said kind of came together because it was very similar. So that gave me my first experience with the UFOs and the extraterrestrials. Dr. John Mack has now passed away, so we won't have him back on the show, at least not live. But we'll have more people coming on to give us information. In John Mack's interviews, he did talk about maybe they're not from somewhere else. Maybe they're from another dimension. Maybe it's when we get into certain places, just like you do in dreams, get into certain places in your consciousness. There are entities that reside at these different dimensions of consciousness. And he believed that a lot of the people, that's where they were abducted. Doesn't mean they weren't abducted. Their souls were abducted. So he was not definitive about it. He didn't say it's only physical or it's only other dimensions. He did open his mind to where this was all coming from. And bottom line is that he believed the sincerity of the people. And so I'm hearing the footsteps of getting to know more about this subject. Again, I think it's very important. I'd like to say something also about, we'll come back to that, of course, because David will be on too, but the other aspects besides Mercury going direct today, like 7-something tonight, is a Saturn-Uranus conjunction. And that happened on the 17th. And there'll be 2 more passes of that. Let's see if I wrote that down. did. I don't have it in front of me. I'll get it to you later. But 2 more times Saturn will be conjunct Uranus this year. And Saturn conjunct Uranus is about, on one level, it's about order. Saturn wants things defined. So that speaks to wanting order. Uranus wants to break away from anything that restrains it, captures it, limits its ability to be free. So, yeah. Got it.
Square.
Yeah, sorry about that. Deborah was just reminding me that they're square to one another. And that's true. Saturn square to Uranus. What I'm thinking about is I'm going to tell you all the times that Saturn and Uranus were conjunct. And that'll give you, more information about what this is all about. But again, Saturn is order. Uranus is breaking away, liberating yourself. Let's go back, and I'm going to give you all the dates that's happened. The conjunctions of Saturn and Uranus, the oppositions of Saturn and Uranus, and this time, the square of Saturn and Uranus. But let's go back to 1781. In 1781, Uranus was discovered. So the whole Saturn-Uranus square opposition conjunction made no difference because it didn't exist in people's minds, Uranus. In 1781, however, it was discovered. And that year, 1781, was like a good marking point for revolutionary activity. The United States Revolution, 1776 it began, and the French Revolution was going on in the 1780s also. So that's Uranus. And when you look at the United States Constitution, Bill of Rights and things like that, there's a lot in there that's very Uranian and Aquarian, because Uranus is the ruling planet of Aquarius. So important to see the order, the old order, kings and queens, etc. That was the old order. Uranus breaking down the old order, rebelling, revolution. And so when we look at Saturn, Uranus at any time, like we're looking at today, they're square. We have to look at it from that way of looking at it, which is Saturn is the old ways in many ways, and Uranus is the new ways. And the new ways of the Age of Aquarius, because it's the ruling planet of Aquarius. So this is important when Saturn and Uranus make an aspect to each other, because Saturn represents the old, established, and Uranus represents the new, outside-the-box ways of being. In our way of looking at it, the Age of Aquarius. So let me give you something else. In between Saturn and Uranus in the heavens is Chiron, which was discovered in 1977. So let me tell you more about what my research and experience with Chiron is. Sitting between Saturn and Uranus, Chiron is a bridge between the old world and the old consciousness on the one hand, and the new world and the new consciousness on the other hand. Chiron is the bridge between those two worlds. A lot of people say it's a healing energy. Well, you can see why that would be healing. Just like if you have an argument with somebody and you're against each other, you're standing your ground, no one's going to stop you from having the opinion that you've got. And then all of a sudden you find a bridge. Either somebody walks into the room that can bring these two opposing viewpoints together, or you find it inside yourself. But that's Chiron. It's a bridge between the old and the new, more specifically old and new, not just a bridge for anything. Remember, Uranus was discovered in 1781. That was our first clue from the universe that there was a new age coming, because there's new planets to be discovered. And that one was perfect for an Aquarian age because it's an Aquarian planet, and it was happening at the time that Aquarian Uranian activities were going on our planet with the revolutions. So then the next planets were discovered in 1846, Neptune, and in 1930, Pluto. So all of these planets are, again, more and more information, more and more putting it out there that our consciousness must change in order to be aligned with this new age. And so a lot of the crises that you go through even now in your life, or the ones we see out in the world, they have a lot to do with letting go of the old age, the old consciousness, and letting in the new age and the new consciousness. And a lot of the old consciousness in the United States has to do with the military-industrial complex. And that's an important thing for us to look at. Remember, it's economic, industrial, and it's military. Those two in the empire that's been built around the United States, those two in the empire are the power of the empire, military, industrial, military economy. Let me take you back to the times that Saturn has been conjunct and opposite Uranus. 1942 was a conjunction, like early months of 1942. What was happening around that same time? Well, World War II began for the United States on December 7th, 1941. So there's the military, out of the military-industrial, military-economic complex. In 1965 was Saturn opposite Uranus. In fact, that year Saturn was opposite Uranus and Pluto. That was a really powerful year for change. And what was going on? It brought in the 60s revolution. And militarily speaking, the beginning of the United States involved in the Vietnam War was 1965. So 65 was another important year of looking at order versus disorder. But disorder, again, means moving into a new world. It's not just disorder for the sake of disorder. It's not chaos for the sake of chaos. It's a way of breaking down the old and letting the new in. But that's not always pleasant. It's like when you're transforming in your own life. And that means there'll be a Uranus, Neptune, Pluto transit going on almost always. There's pain in letting go of the past, even if you don't like what the past was. And that's the same thing here. There's a letting go of the past. So in 65, the 60s revolution coming on, it brought out the military too because of Vietnam, but also civil rights, human rights, African Americans, women, LGBTQ, like things opening up and being more fair playing field for everybody. So then 1988 was the next time that Saturn was conjunct Uranus. And what was happening in 1988? That was the first year of the Soviet Union falling apart. Pretty much 1988 to 1991 were the years of transition for the Soviet Union into Russia. So again, military. We had a Cold War going on with them. Next time, 2009. What was going on in 2009? Housing crisis. Now it's the economy. Well, these are not just all minor events I've been mentioning to you. We're talking about World War, Vietnam War, at the beginning of the 60s. We're talking about the breakdown of the Soviet Union. These are all huge events happening for the world. And you see all of them have some amount of military or economic challenge when the Saturn and Uranus make aspect with each other. Because again, the old world paradigm is coming down. And we all have to be aware of it and on our toes with it. Remain calm. It's all natural. It's all coming from the universe. It's all going to be just what we need. But it's not easy to let go of things that you wanted to hold on to for whatever reason. So the next time is 2032, I believe. But now let's pause and let's talk about now, 2021. Again, Saturn, Uranus, the old. When you look at like the white supremacists or the neo-Nazis that are involved in so many things, you say, well, that's the old world. That takes us back to things like slavery, which are our past, which a civil war was fought for around. As we're moving into a new age, just like if you're moving into a new chapter of your life, you first have to release the past and or resolve the past. Obviously, this is coming up. It started in 2017 in Charlottesville. But obviously, this is coming up because we have not healed and we have not resolved. When those people stormed the Capitol with the Confederate flags, trust me, the issue's not been resolved for a lot of people. So we still need to resolve it. We still need to heal it before we can move more fully into this new age in Aquarius. That's why it keeps coming back up on us, this culture war. I always tell people when I'm working with them that things are not so simple as here's the bad guys and here's the good guys. And, when I'm doing couples counseling, that comes up all the time. The one person is right, the other person's wrong. And it's the bridge between the places that brings people together, not the judging who's right and who's wrong. It usually doesn't help a couple to come together. And it doesn't help in general with just about anything. Like I think we're moving more and more into win-win consciousness. And the more and more people that get into win-win consciousness realize that it's not about beating somebody else. That's for sports, That's our boxing matches. That's not for living every day with people. So we need to find a bridge to what their viewpoint is. So the bridge I've got for understanding the Trump people is that they are like underneath all the other things that you see, which is kind of crazy stuff sometimes, like QAnon. There's a belief that government should not be running our lives, that it should be we the people that run our lives. Now, in my estimation, there's a very distorted way of looking at that, because being a teenager and saying I want what I want and I'm going to get it now isn't the same as freedom. But nevertheless, I think that's a lot of where they're coming from, and that's something we need. We don't need a 1984 world. We have to be on our toes, seeing if anything's coming our way that's going to limit our freedoms. And again, I don't mean teenage freedoms. I mean the freedom to choose, the freedom to experience what you want to and what you don't want to experience. To me, that's our bridge to those people, is to understand that a lot of it's coming from a place of continued freedom. Now, you and I know that in order for there to be real freedom, you got to take responsibility for your life. That's why the teenage way of looking at freedom doesn't work. It's any teenagers out there is not a slam on you. that's natural to your age. But freedom means taking responsibility. Otherwise, freedom doesn't work. So if we become more responsible for the world that we live in, for instance, then we're moving into that new world thinking. But we have to feel the responsibility that we have as individuals to create that new world. Otherwise, what do? We go, oh, well, look, the king or the president or the Congress or somebody made this big mistake. That's why we're in the shape that we're in. Even though it may be true, more important is we need to take responsibility for it, and we have to declare that this is our world. That's the important part of all this. Remember, the Aquarian age is about diversity within unity to a large degree. And so diversity means all the different individual elements are not judged, help to be authentic, and to have a role in the community of people. And same thing with states or countries. They need to be individualistically who they really are. And from that place, you find unity within diversity. Old ways of finding unity are what? Old ways of finding unity are, let's all be the same. Oh, you're not being saying you're not doing the politically correct thing. We're not on the same team. No, that's not unity. Unity again, that for the new world, is diversity within unity. You believe totally differently than I do, so your voice needs to be respected as well as mine. Because when we put all these voices together, that's when we find out what's best for the whole, what's best for the country, what's best for the community. So we got a lot of work ahead of us, to get to that place. And the Saturn Uranus is a wonderful, wonderful way to get in touch with the old and the new. What's in the old box? What's the new outside the box? Keep in mind, you don't want to throw everything away from the old. We want to bring with us into the new those things from the old that still have meaning, that still have life in them. So again, we need to stay away from the hatred and the war and get more in touch with we're all different. We need to learn to accept and care about one another and create a new world together, because that's what's going to be happening. It's going to be more and more where we, the people, are going to be given the reins of this world. It may not look like it right now, but I know that that's where it's headed. So Chiron, in-betweener, a joiner of opposites. Let me give you a quick story about Chiron, myth about Chiron that might help. Prometheus, who a lot of people believe is a really good symbol of the Aquarian age. Prometheus was coming from the gods to bring, what's said is bring the fire from the gods to the humans. I think that's kind of what we're saying with diversity within unity, because if we are getting something from the gods, that's what we can do now. Not put them up as authority figures. Find the God and the goddess inside each one of us. And Prometheus was bringing us that. Well, Zeus didn't like it, according to the myth. Zeus tied him up, tied him down. And an eagle, I believe was the kind of bird, some bird, hawk or eagle, came and they were eating Prometheus's liver, kind of slowly knocking him off. Chiron at that time was a teacher for young humans. He was like a mentor. And he wanted and knew that what Prometheus was bringing to humans, because he cared about humans, Chiron, at least that's what I've been reading. He cared about humans and wanted us to grow and get better. And so he was against what Zeus did to Prometheus, and he made a deal. Remember now, Zeus is an immortal. Chiron's an immortal when he goes down there helping the humans. Zeus says, if you give up your immortality and you go there and you get yourself tied up, we'll let Prometheus go. Oh, not an easy decision, would it be? But Chiron, according to the myth, did exactly that. He took Prometheus's place, and Prometheus came and gave the gifts from the gods to the human family. And it's a good thing to think about when you're thinking about this Aquarian age. We need to take responsibility for who we are. And we can't do it if we think that we're not worth anything. The whole idea of original sin, I think, holds us back. I know people out there will disagree with me, but I think it holds us back. We don't need to come into this world thinking that there's something wrong with us the day that we're born. Yeah, there's things we can improve on, all of us. But I don't think it's a good way of looking at things to think there's something like horribly wrong about us that we have to feel guilty about. Because that's what happens with it. People feel guilty, and that takes away their strength, that takes away their empowerment, and does not allow them to take the gift from the gods. Because that puts them in a place of something wrong with me, the gods, the authority figures. They're the ones that I have to rely on, not myself. So we're getting right up on halfway through, and I would like to bring on in just a minute I would like to bring on David Mahaney. Let me take a look at what people are writing right now. Just pop out. Some good questions, but nothing I can answer. I can answer right now. Like if God really exists, I certainly can't tell people the answer to that. I think that we're also moving into a new spiritual place in each one of us. That I believe for sure. Doesn't not religious necessarily, probably not, but spiritual. Spiritual to me means the connections. Everything is connected. Everyone's connected. Opposites are connected. Like as I pull this out all the time on you, like this yin yang sign. Opposites, but look, they're together. There's a circle around them. They're not beating each other up. The nature of opposites is to be connected within the same whole. Could you imagine hot water being at war with cold water? It's the same thing. We don't need wars between things that are different or opposite. We need to find ways to bring them together. So after that rant, I would like to bring us to David Mahaney. Later on, stay tuned after David. Deborah will be coming on. But first, I'd like to bring David on, David Mahaney. David, hi. Well, I guess I got to let you on first. Hi.
Hi, Leo. Good to see you.
Same here, David. So the last couple of weeks that you've been on, last couple of times you've been on, we've been talking about the past and the history.
Yep.
Of aliens, extraterrestrials, UFOs, whatever words that people want to use. So let's go back to it. Would that be okay?
Sure. Where we left off last time was at the Italian Renaissance.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the 7 space beings who talked for 3 hours with a good friend of Leonardo da Vinci. So that was the last story.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. What does that mean?
Yeah. The man, the Italian Fazio Cardano, he was a mathematician and a lawyer. And one night in his study, while he was reading, 7 men appeared, 7 light beings. And so this comes from a written record that he put down following that evening. 7 men about 40 years of age appeared in his studio. They said they were composed of air. They would lead lives that could be 300 years in duration. They talked about immortality, about the origin of the universe, the nature of God.
Funny I just brought up the.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So what they were saying was that one of them denied that God made the world from eternity. Another one disagreed and said that God created the universe from moment to moment, so that if he ever stopped creating the universe, the world would come to an end. And that's about the extent that I was able to find from this record. But a 3-hour conversation with 7
and
space
that's what Da Vinci
beings.
said. That's what Da Vinci said. These 7 beings told him all that.
Yes, that is the written record. This gentleman, Fazio Cardano, who was a friend of Leonardo da Vinci. This was Milan, 1491. Another, the artist Michelangelo, evidently in 1513 in Rome, observed a triangular light with 3 tails of different colors. A UFO in our language, we would say. And he wrote, quote, "The light resembled a star with three tails, one silver, the second one red, and the third fiery and bifurcated."
Wow.
Evidently,
Yes.
interesting distinction there. Did a picture of this, but the painting has not survived. So, but
Too bad.
it was
Yeah.
recorded in his journals. Um, Back around that time period, Christopher Columbus in
Mhm.
1492, one of his he had the three ships that sailed the
Yes.
ocean blue, as the
Yes.
poem goes.
Yes.
Evidently, one night in the Bahamas, in front of the ship, um, Christopher Columbus wrote in his journal, quote, "The admiral again perceived it once or twice, appearing like the light of a wax candle moving up and down, which some thought to be an indication of land. The admiral directed the crew to keep a strict watch upon the forecastle and look diligently for land, and to him who should first discover land, he promised a silken jacket." So the reward for
That's the least he could have done for finding land.
yes, he wanted the gold, but he was going to give a silk jacket to some lucky crewmate. What good is a silk jacket on a ship in the middle
For
of the
real.
Atlantic?
Yes.
Yeah, but now coming forward in time, February 1st, 1554, Nostradamus in Salon de Provence, France, wrote of a sighting that thousands of people observed. He described it as, quote, "a most terrifying and horrible sight. Near the moon, which at that time was in the first quarter, a great fire did come from the east and make its way towards the west. Flames did spurt from it like a glowing iron being
Mhm.
worked by a smith. Then slowly, over the course of 20 minutes, it turned toward the south, high over the sea. This omen was seen by over 1,000 people."
Mm.
Um, we'll touch in a few minutes more recent sightings that thousands of people have seen. It's not always just one person, one sighting.
Yes.
There's some that are widespread. Um, in the 1800s, there were sightings across Europe, Japan, China, Australia, Mexico, Canada. In the United States, 17 different states had reports, reports with a written record to substantiate this, not just hearsay, but someone had a first person writing about what they observed.
When
17
did this
different
happen?
states had such
When did it happen, David?
events.
When was it?
What's
When?
That was in during the 1800s. The
Okay.
states included North Carolina, New York, Maine, New Hampshire, Hawaii, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Connecticut. Hawaii wasn't a state then, but in the on the island of Hawaii. I don't have details about all of those, but that's just sort of showing the breadth of sightings in that.
Yes.
78 in Dallas, Texas, there was by a farmer who used the term a saucer to describe the shape, quite likely the first recorded use of that term.
You
And
said
in
1978, you said, or
no, that was
1878?
that was 1878.
Thank you.
In 1897, the newspapers in Dallas, Fort Worth published stories of a UFO crash and a burial of its alien pilot in the cemetery of Aurora, Texas.
Hmm.
I couldn't find the actual news article, but I found descriptions of the article. So
That's good.
there's a close encounter where they
Yes.
buried the alien in Aurora, Texas. Maybe we can go there sometime and look at the tombstones.
Do some digging. Get your digging clothes on. Yes.
Yeah. I guess, that's not that's a bit further east of Roswell, New Mexico. Um, Roswell, as you said, was the 1947, and that's when they really picked up in the United States. But so that's sort of a quick on the historical. Um,
David, let me just jump in for 1 second on that, and that's it. I have someone that I know that claims to have an interview with a woman who in 1947 actually saw the extraterrestrials. And so I'm going to
wow.
get her
Wow.
on in the not too distant future.
That's
Uh,
great.
yeah, it's really fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. To have first person descriptions, takes us to a whole new level.
Yep.
Um, so last week you referenced the Hudson River Valley.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that's pretty wild. Um, More than 5,000 residents reported seeing these objects over a 2-year period. Very large gray object, silent, bright lights, brilliant colors. On Interstate 84, traffic stopped at one of these sightings. So think of that. Cars are driving at 70 miles per hour, and there's an event in the sky that is so powerful, people collectively all stop their car on an interstate to
Wow.
get out and observe this.
Wow. What
Um,
exactly did they do? What was the consensus on what was seen?
yeah, yeah. They're the two camps. The one disclaim, oh, it's a group of planes flying at low altitude. But there's extensive photographic documentation, and there's been ongoing investigations. Recently, um, in May of 2019, more investigations, were going on to that Hudson River Valley sightings. There's a lot of supporting information that this was widely substantiated to have been an unexplained flying object. And there's a consistency in the descriptions, the silent object, low flying, bright lights. And that's one of the things, is the consistency of certain descriptions that come up.
Yes.
It bears a similarity that's really striking.
You have
Out
time for one more to give me, maybe Phoenix or
Yeah,
something more to say
exactly.
on
I
this
was
one?
going to do Phoenix, and
Okay.
that's really wild. That was March of '97. Um, there were two main sightings. One close to you, in the town of Prescott and Dewey, Arizona. Um, an object descended from the sky. Again, low flying, silent, a pattern of lights. It traveled from, that's north central Arizona, all the way south to Tucson in one continuous path, in a continuous sighting. The governor of Arizona, Fife Symington,
Yes.
uh, acknowledged that he observed this and confirmed unequivocally what he saw.
What did he say he saw?
He said it was undeniable and
Wow.
unexplainable. But that's the governor,
Yeah,
you know,
that's a pretty good source.
going on record. Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
really good source. Yeah.
Um, Bipartisan.
Yes.
But then also at that time in Phoenix, there was an object observed by thousands of people for a half hour, this object hovered in the sky over Phoenix, Arizona,
How long
in the
did you just
same
say?
period of time.
How long did you say?
30
An hour?
minutes
30
for
minutes?
about a half hour,
Yes.
observed by thousands of people. Photographs are, documented. Documentaries on the History Channel, I guess, tell this story in more detail. But, so these are 1997, where thousands of people have all substantiated the same sighting. It's
Were they
pretty,
were they both in 1997? Were they both in 1997? The one
yeah,
year?
yes, the ones in Arizona, collectively referred to as the Phoenix Lights, were in March of 1997. Then, evidently, in the years 2007 and 2008, there was some reappearance of lights, but the main Arizona sighting was in 1997. Two occurrences, thousands of people seeing them.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really good to hear that things like that are happening to such a large group of people are seeing these things.
And that woman I mentioned who lives in Prescott, has had her own encounters. So somebody else you could interview on a future
So,
show.
so maybe you'll hook me up with that lady and we can have her on the air.
Happy to.
Good, excellent. Thanks so much, David. Really
Take
appreciate
care,
what
Leo.
you
Good to
bring to
see
the
you.
show.
All
Bye
right.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, we're going to have Deborah in a second. I just want to make comment on some of the extraterrestrial stuff so you can see. Um, this is a hot subject. It's not going away. I wanted to add, and I've said this in other shows that I've put out, and that's that two eclipses that happened around the time of the Roswell incident are happening again at the same degrees of the signs. So, in other words, at 28 degrees of Taurus was the eclipse that happened just before the July 8th crash. And then there was a Sagittarius Gemini full moon back then that happened just before the crash. Those two eclipses, those switched. This lunar one and the solar one switched. Same degrees. And that happens in December. That hasn't happened in between 1947 and now. So I believe there's something really meaningful about that. And that's one of the reasons that I think that this year is a year where things are really going to open up around the subject. I'm going to bring Deborah on in just a second, but I want to also say some of you that have heard me in previous shows know that Deborah and I were sitting outside our home last summer, I believe it was. And we had on the internet, we had a group of people that were talking about UFOs and bringing them out so that we all could see them, or telling them to come out so we could all see them. And as they were talking about that, and I was leaning back in the chair looking out at the sky or meditating, I opened my eyes, looked out at the night sky, and there was some kind of a rectangular, I think. It was kind of goldish orange, and it just flashed right across the sky like that. Never seen anything like it before or since. And that's also another thing that's bringing me to get more involved in wanting to do this subject. So, with no further ado, and no further gab on my part, let's bring on Deborah. Hi, Deb.
Hey there, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, awesome. So, hey, everybody. Very interesting conversation, huh? About the UFOs
Yes.
and star beings, which I'm very interested in connecting with those star beings. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the cycles. That's a lot of my work is tuning into the cycles and the seasons and how it connects with people's lives and how they experience that. So we just entered the second quarter moon. And so we're, leading up to the full moon, which is going to be next Saturday. And since, we're not meeting for 2 weeks, I thought I would talk a little bit about that. And in the cycle of Venus, which I'm very connected to, the cycle of Venus is a 19-month cycle that where Venus is visible in the morning sky, and then she's not visible for a few months, and then she's visible in the evening sky. And it very much connects with the myth of Inanna and the descent to the underworld and the ascent back from the underworld, and how that connects with us in terms of releasing old energies and then rising up, going through a transformation, then rising up. Well, right now we're in the phase of the Venus cycle, which is in the underworld phase, which means the sun, Venus is on the other side of the sun. And the sun and Venus are going to be conjuncting. And then in May, the Venus will rise up again in the evening sky. And she's not visible at all for the next few months. So this is a time, and plus it's, Pisces time of year, to really delve inward to your inner depths. And there might be things that you need to let die within yourself. There might be an old way of being, an old self, an old part of yourself that you need to let die and be transformed so you can be reborn again. So that's what always death and rebirth is. It's always about being reborn, dying, letting go, being reborn. And it's also about facing our fears, anything that's blocking us or that's in our way. So during this time between now, Venus just entered the underworld last Saturday until the beginning of May, when she rises up, is this time to actually be in the darkness, or meaning face your own fears, what's in your unconscious, anything that's in the shadow that you may need to just look at and bring love to, because really that's what helps transform anything that is in the shadow or unconscious inside of you, is to bring love to it. And that helps it transform. So now is a really good time to focus on your inner releasing of the old self, and your inner transformation. And so that you can be reborn as Venus rises.
Excuse me one second. This makes me think about Inanna and Pluto. Like Venus is in the underworld. Do you think there's some kind of correlation? Was that myth potentially there because Venus was in the underworld at that time?
No, the whole cycle of Venus. I've been studying this from a shamanic astrology perspective, and the whole cycle of Venus is connected to Inanna. In fact, many believe that that's where the myth came from, because it's exactly directly connected to the cycle of Venus. And Inanna.
Want to tell people very briefly what that myth is about Pluto, guardian of the underworld, taking Inanna down under?
Well, actually, it's not Persephone. It's different. So it's different. Inanna actually chooses to go to the underworld. Okay. And she chooses on her own free will that she's going to go to the underworld to visit her dark sister, Ereshkigal. And so she plans everything out. She has everything prepared in case she doesn't come right back by the god Enki to come and get her if she doesn't return. And she passes through the 7 gates on her way to the underworld, where she relinquishes everything, and she's naked in the underworld. And she stands there, and she her dark sister, her shadow side, annihilates her. But then she's reborn again. She dies to her old self. She's totally released everything. She's shed everything that she used to be. And then she's reborn again. And then she rises up through the gateways, and then she's crowned the Queen of Heaven. So it's really about that cycle. Yes. And the planet Venus actually goes through those passages and those gateways. So right now,
let's say that it's, excuse me, honey. Let's say that it's Persephone even. So Pluto took Persephone to the underworld, right? Then brought her back up to Demeter, who's the goddess of the earth or grains or whatever she was or is.
Yes.
But he told her when he brought her back, he told Demeter, I'm going to have to take her back down every so often because she needs to remember what we're teaching her now in the underworld.
And so it's those myths of Persephone and the myths of Inanna, they're also connected to the agricultural year, especially Persephone. Because Persephone is in the underworld half the year, and then she returns in the spring, which is what brings spring on. And in the autumn is when she returns to the underworld. So it's all connected to nature. And all the myths were connected to nature. And Inanna is connected to the cycle of Venus. Persephone is more connected to the seasons and the seasons of the year, yearly cycle. And Inanna is connected to the cycle of Venus as she makes her descent and ascent. And I can talk more about that later on, but it's fascinating because I just want to mention the full moon, because I know we only have a couple minutes leading up to the full moon in Virgo, and that also Venus is going to move into Pisces on Thursday this week. So we'll have the Sun, Venus, and Neptune in Pisces, which is, that dreamy time. So I always think of Pisces as a really good time because it's the end of the solar year before Aries in the spring to really let go, really surrender, allow yourself to be in the dreaming time, like dreaming what you want to bring into life in your own life. And also, connecting to the oneness, connecting to the oneness of the universe, your own spiritual path. And also, it's a very, Pisces is very artistic too, connecting with the poetry of life, the flow of life, the mystical side of life. And then with the Virgo, so with the Virgo full moon, it'll be, as always, I know you always talk about, Leo, that they're opposite each other. So the full moon in Pisces, in Virgo, will be opposite the sun in Pisces. And I just want to say a little bit about the full moon in Virgo. Whenever there's a full moon, it's that fullness. It's the peak of the lunar cycle. It's, the moon is in its fullest expression. And Virgo has a lot to do with, the virgin priestess, the Vestal Virgin, Vesta and Hestia. So it's a time to, in a way, reorder your hearth and the inner heart, your own inner hearth too. So it's like seeing your body as your sacred temple and your home as your sacred temple, and putting that in order, in a sacred order. Virgo's a lot about seeing the sacredness of the earth and the sacredness of life. And so like reconsecrating your altars during the full moon in Virgo is a wonderful thing to do. And to also look at, okay, how can I consecrate my own body as a sacred temple? Are there things that I need to do, like a cleanse, or does my body need, more relaxation or whatever it is? Because Virgo is an earth sign, but it's a lot about healing and putting into sacred order. So, reconsecrating your altars, taking your crystals out in the moonlight, and then, rebuilding your altar, because it's like about that sacred order and connection to not only the sacredness of the earth, but also the mystical side of life and the great oneness of all that is with all the Pisces energy. So, and as always, the healing of our earth too. So at the full moon, you can just focus on some of those things in your life and bringing that sacred order with your body, your home, your sacred spaces.
Thank you, Deborah.
Yes. Thank you all so much.
As you can tell, Deborah always brings a sense of the sacredness of things. Like a lot of people when they talk about astrology or they talk about anything metaphysical, they make it all intellectual oftentimes, and they make it like mathematical and detached from the human condition. See, when Deborah brings these things up, it's like connected not only to the spirit of things, but to the soul and to the body and to the earth of things. It makes things sacred. And I know you all appreciate that as much as I do. Let me also say that this full moon, the Virgo Pisces full moon, is usually a very gentle full moon. It's usually very, very gentle because both Virgo and Pisces have a gentleness about them. So you can find it easier during this full moon to kind of surrender, let go, get out of your head, be centered.
Exactly.
Much easier to do with this full moon than other ones.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. Yeah. Awesome, everyone. And if you want to reach me, you can reach me at GaiaSophiaTempleOfTheHeart.com and also on our website, spiritualrenaissance.com. I'll send it back to you, Leo, for the close.
Thanks, Deb.
Thanks so much, everybody.
If any of you have any like ceremonies that you like to do and some rituals that you want help with, contact Deborah. She just gave you the email. She would be happy, I know, to help you through whatever rituals or ceremonies that you might want to do.
Yes, that's my favorite love. Thank you.
I know. And yes.
Oh no, and just helping people through their own cycles in life.
Yeah,
so.
that's like her love. And
yes.
But when you're in one of her ceremonies or the ritual, I know I'm biased. You're all going to say it's your wife, but no, it's not true. It's because it's true. She really does bring, and she's done weddings and things like that too. She really does bring something really special to people's hearts and souls for these different rituals and ceremonies.
Thanks
so
so
be back. You're welcome. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and by next time we're gonna bring it to the next level. The show, we're gonna put music on before and after, maybe even in the middle, and we're gonna bring on new guests. We're gonna keep our regular guests from time to time also. We're going to bring on some new guests too, especially around the UFO extraterrestrial issue. If you want to get a hold of me, best way is at Soulus, SOULUS, at AOL.com. That's SOULUS at AOL.com. I can give you information about readings and things like that. Or you can go up to my website, KnightonTallarico.com, and find out more about me that way and the work that I do. Love you all. Take care of yourself. Hey, look, it can be rough, but it's going in the right direction. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Things are getting better. Hop on that because that's what's happening on the deeper of levels. Take care, everyone. See you in a couple of weeks.